Hey guys, and welcome back to Spotlight Reviews. On the Spotlight today is Season 3, Episode 8 of The Handmaid's Tale, and let's get into it. I have been waiting to hear Aunt Lydia's backstory, or if we were ever going to know her backstory, because Aunt Lydia is sort of like my favorite character, not because of her, ideologies or anything, but just because she's so complex, and I just really like the dynamic she brings to the show. Now, when we flash back to her life before Gilead, we learn that she's a fourth grade teacher. And that really seems like the perfect occupation for Aunt Lydia, or it seems like that's what she would be. She's joyful. She has like her hair down, and she really does seem like that teacher that really cares about the students. She's staying late, to be with Ryan. She's concerned about him, and she even is going to take him home with her just to make sure that he's okay. And that all seems pretty innocent and pretty heroic at first. Now, what I did notice is that she quoted the Bible with the principal, who was her crush. So that tells me that she's always had that faith. That wasn't something that she learned, a learned behavior that she adopted once she became an aunt in Gilead. That was something that was a part of her original, personality. That was something she was already doing. So I thought that was an interesting personality trait. One thing I noticed was that Aunt Lydia has crosses in her house. There's a cross on that shelf in the corner there, and then there's another cross in another room against the wall by a lamp. So I think that was just showing that she is religious, and that's something that is very important to her. And she even cringes when Noelle suggests that maybe Aunt Lydia would have had a girlfriend or boyfriend, and she flinches at that. So I think that it's showing that religion and just being traditional is very important to her. She doesn't even want to drink when she goes out on that date with Jim. So I think that was just to show, another part of her reserved and safe personality. Noelle admits to her that, her son deserves better. And Aunt Lydia says to her, well, you can be better. And I think that that's Aunt Lydia's natural coaching. She always wants to coach somebody and mentor people, which reminds me of how she is with handmaids. I think Noelle is basically like Aunt Lydia's first handmaid, because she's trying to be supportive towards her, but I think her support is more like control. And she can seem comforting, but then at the end, she calls CPS on Noelle, and I just feel like it's just like how she is with handmaids. She tries to comfort them, she wipes their tears, and then she burns them, or she, creates such a harsh punishment towards them. And to her, all of that is just equidistant. It's like it balances out this care that she feels that she has for them. In the Christmas scene, I feel like this was kind of a foreshadowing of Aunt Lydia, like the persona being built, because Ryan says, thank you, Aunt Lydia. And I feel like that's the first time we actually hear that. You know how you adopt someone as your extended family. You just call them aunt, whoever. And I feel like that's what he did. It showed that, that Aunt Lydia existed before you even became real Aunt Lydia in the Gilead. And I also feel like, maybe she was kind of doting over Noelle, but I don't think it was an attraction sort of thing, like a sexual attraction. I think it had more to do with she liked the personal attention that Noelle was giving her. I mean, she hasn't had any physical attention from anyone, and I just think that she was enjoying somebody giving her personal attention and her that kind of comfort and loving feeling. Another thing I noticed was she asked Noelle, how's her dating life and everything like that. And Noelle says to her, I know where I'm not as far as we want me to be. And that was interesting for me, because it was almost like she needs approval from Aunt Lydia. She needs, there's some kind of grading scale about how she's doing in her life and how successful she is with relationships or with her job. And she's like, well, just as long as you're trying, that's the most important thing. And I just felt like she was kind of judging her throughout their whole relationship and kind of giving her a grading, system on how well she's progressing. Okay, so let's get into Aunt Lydia and Jim and their whole romantic relationship. Now, We learned that Aunt Lydia has previously been married. She's not married anymore. And she said that he was a mistake. So what happened there? Was he abusive? What, did it just not work out? Did they try to have children? Did that not work out? I want to know more about what happened there, because I feel like whatever happened in her last relationship and marriage is very important to who she is right now in this story within the flashback. Why she's not very trusting, why she doesn't drink, why she clings so keenly on, scripture, why she doesn't want to drink at the date, why she feels that sense of rejection when he wasn't ready to be physical with her. I mean, that this man, had lost his wife and he may not be ready, but does that mean that you take that so harshly that it affects your whole entire personality? For me, it couldn't have just been that one instance. I mean, you're banging the mirror, you're breaking glass over this feeling of rejection. It's got to come from a deeper place than this one situation for me. So after that situation, we just see her shift in her personality. I mean, look at her. She even looks older. She has her hair in that bun that we know of her so well, and we see that her attire has changed. It's more reserved. She's, more just, I guess, simpler. And I like in this shot, it's showing how she's standing on just that red circle. To me, that was kind of foreshadowing that she is going to be above the handmaids and she's going to be the one that's in charge of them. That was just a small little, foreshadowing image that I felt like they were trying to communicate there. Did you guys notice that the CPS rep was recording their conversation on a recorder? And also on the paperwork that she signs, it says no work, dirty, and affairs. I just thought that was interesting to show, what he was actually writing on that paper. Also, that he asked Aunt Lydia, do they go to church, meaning Noelle and Ryan? And I thought that was an interesting question to ask. Why would he ask that? I think it's because this is when the transition into Gilead is starting to happen. And now they're starting to pinpoint, bad mothers and where to place children. And, I think that CPS representative is definitely a pawn for the new government that's starting to happen in Gilead and filtering out, children and mothers and everything like that. I also wonder if that woman ends up becoming a handmaid and what happens to that child. I kind of wonder what happens to their story after this once Gilead forms. And Lydia tells Noelle, this is your fault, right? You know that, right? And I feel like that's exactly the same thing she does when they have those little handmade confession circles and they say, how they were pointing in the middle at the person whose fault it is. And she asked them, like, whose fault it is? It's her fault. It's her fault. This is where I think that ideology was born into Aunt Lydia, which makes me think that Aunt Lydia created these tactics and she implemented them based on, basically this whole situation going down, because that was exactly how they act in those handmaid circles when they're pointing at you and saying it's your fault. So I feel like that's what she used in order to be her motivation as a teaching, mechanism or tactic for handmaids later on in Gilead. In this episode, we get a peek into how the aunts conduct business. They are in charge of making placements for the handmaids and evaluating suitable postings for them. And I felt like this was a really interesting look at how the decisions are made between them, and also what do they talk about amongst each other, in order to come to decisions and conduct business. One thing I noticed was that the handmaids' file folders were red and they have that Rachel and Leah Center crest on it. And the commander folders are white and they have that Republic of Gilead written across it with the crest. Each of the handmaids have their picture in their file folder and it has like a front view and then the side view. And they also have fingerprints. And I noticed that there's a red number written in that top block. And I'm wondering, is that a coordinating number like to an ear tag that they have? You know how they have the ear tags. I wonder if there's a number on that. And another thing I noticed is that none of the information is redacted. So that means that the ants are allowed to read what's in these files. And I believe that's maybe just a privilege that they have. And that the rubber bands that they use are that same teal color that, you know, the wives wear. So everything coordinates in color. It's either white, black, you know, teal, red, or, you know, a grayish or brownish color. Nothing is going to be like bright orange or purple. They keep everything the same color scheme. I also noticed that they use this lazy Susan in the middle of their table in order to pass around files. I'm not sure why they decided to use that, have that nuance there. I mean, it's just an easier way, I guess, to pass across the table, but it's not like it's a huge table, so I'm not sure why they have that. But I thought it was interesting. They have all of the files with open files on top, and then they have like the closed files on the bottom. So it's like they pick from the top layer, then they make piles, you know, completed piles on the bottom layer of the table. And then I like how they passed around the liquor bottle using the lazy Susan. Instead of just passing it to each other, they just rolled it around that whole thing, and then they had a toast to each other, which I thought was interesting, because Aunt Lydia didn't drink before, and now, you know, now that she's, you know, the head aunt in charge, I guess that's another thing they're allowed to have is some type of liquor or alcoholic beverage. Another thing they bring up is the issue of race. You know, race is not really an issue that comes up as a topic in The Handmaid's Tale normally. So I thought it was really good that they included that about them not wanting a handmaid of color to be their next handmaid, because that is really realistic to me. It seems like certain commanders will want certain preferences, and that commander is white, and I think by him having a white, you know, handmaid, that furthers the fantasy for them that all their children are actually, you know, their children because it looks like them. I think that's something that a commander would say, like that is a realistic thing that they would do, and it shows that it's not just about them being fertile. Race does have, you know, is a factor in where these handmaids are placed and what the aunts have to do in order to accommodate these households. All right, let's talk about June. Now, June has taken her spite and her anger towards of Matthew to a whole nother level. First of all, June has always been selfish, and as the season goes on, she becomes more and more selfish, and she pushes things too far, like I said before, without any plan or any care about the repercussions of the things she does. Like, she made that agreement with the Swiss that Nick would talk to them, and, you know, she forced Mrs. Lawrence out of the house, not even knowing what was going to happen or the state of Mrs. Lawrence, you know, mental illnesses, and she coerced, you know, Hannah's Martha to help her, and that ultimately, you know, got her killed. I feel like she just constantly pushes the envelope, and she doesn't care who gets destroyed, what happens to anybody, as long as she gets the result that she wants. You know, I feel like when it comes to Commander Lawrence, June is really abusing, you know, his power basically, and his acts of morality. You know, she's asking him, does he know any information about Hannah? Which, of course, I think he does know something. He has to know. I mean, he's one of the high commanders. I think he's just telling her that. But the fact that she's always ridiculing him, and she's always, not to say that she's not right about him, you know, how he treats his wife, and the fact that he does have the power to let her escape, and he's keeping her there, which is basically torturing her. But just the fact that she feels as though she can just say that to him without any repercussion, without anything happening to her, she forgets what her place is and that she's easily disposable. If you want to keep on, you know, being boastful and proud and disrespecting people, then you may never see Hannah again, because something can really happen to you and they have the power to do anything. Also, when it comes to the handmaids, June has become like the leader among the rest of the girls because she has done a lot of things that they look up to her for and that, they want to emulate. So when it's time for June to take a dark turn, they're going to follow her. They're going to think that, what she's doing is credible and they're going to treat of Matthew how she tells them to treat her. I mean, June has really become the bully on the playground in this episode. I think they're not taking into regard that how institutionalized of Matthew is and how she really thought that what she did was the right thing to do. And think about it. Aunt Lydia is the one that convinced her. I am sure Aunt Lydia said the right words and the right things to make of Matthew do what she did. I thought that when June told Aunt Lydia that of Matthew didn't want her baby, that was completely unfair because of Matthew was really coming from a genuine place of concern as far as her baby's future. And they could have really done something bad to of Matthew because of that. Just like June said before, she had, bad thoughts when she was pregnant with Nicole, and so of Matthew is too. You can't relate to her one moment and then the next moment you're trying to get her in trouble. I thought that was really evil and terrible for June to do that. And at that point, I'm like, she's using all means necessary to punish of Matthew. By the way, this room seems like it's a basketball court or some type of small gym auditorium. You can see, the lines on the floor and also the basketball rim right there. Just wanted to point that out. And also look at the formation of these seats. I mean, of Matthew's in like the perfect center, and then they're all surrounding her in that outer circle and then another circle on the outside. It's just a small detail that just shows you, how in depth they get as far as like the detail of what they do and that everything has an intention. Wasn't that scene where they had the baby, stillborn baby? Wasn't that just so sad? And June just has no empathy. She has no compassion anymore. I mean, she doesn't even go to hug, that other handmaid to comfort her or anything. She just doesn't care. And by the way, this formation that they are all in, doesn't it look like the shape of a heart? I thought that was really sweet how they all went to her right away after it happened and they consoled her and they hugged her. I also noticed that when June was outside waiting for of Matthew, everyone else had umbrellas, but of Matthew did not have an umbrella. Did somebody steal it? Are they still trying to bully her by taking her umbrella? I just thought that was a clever way to show that, they still were dragging out this punishment and this bullying of Matthew. At the grocery store, of Matthew is just looking for June to just accept her. She is in complete desperation to be accepted by all the handmaids. And Janine is really like the only handmaid that is actually having compassion against her. Janine is trying so hard to still treat her like a human being, to still comfort her and be there for her. But of Matthew just feels too far, rejected by everyone else. And when June just turns away from her and ignores her and smiles, it just like sets of Matthew off. And here we are again. June's actions have allowed somebody to get beat up, which is Janine. I don't know why they keep on beating up Janine in all these episodes. They need to stop. I like Janine. Stop hitting her and harassing her. She's just trying to be nice. And guard gets killed and she gets shot. And all the while, June has this creepy face on, like she is just enjoying this massacre and chaos and watching of Matthew just spiral out of control. And did you guys notice how she just nodded and, looked at Aunt Lydia because she wanted of Matthew to shoot Aunt Lydia, and, she ends up getting shot. And then June just walks over her trail of blood like it's just nothing, just in pure peace and enjoyment. Guys, what do you think about this? Is June being selfish? Is she going too far? How do you think this will be detrimental to her, in the upcoming episodes? I'm glad we got to rewind for Aunt Lydia. I kind of wish there was a little more explanation into, her story, but I'm glad we got to see it. And this is all I have. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.